Staff Sergeant Thomas Florek, a soldier from the Louisiana National Guard who was killed in a training mission near Florida, has been denied burial at Arlington National Cemetery. Why? Well, they say he was not on active duty. Despite the appeal for an exception from his family, the Army continues to stand by that decision. Joining us now, Staff Sergeant Florek's father and former Green Beret himself, Stephen Florek. Good morning, Major Florek.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity.
We're so sorry for your loss, and thank you for your son's service and for your service. Tell us why the Army says that they will not bury your son at Arlington National Cemetery.
Well, sir, I think this is a travesty in the way that we have been fighting the war for the last 14 years as one team in one fight. My son is a professional in the National Guard. He's a professional soldier and a professional in the aviation community. On the mission that he was killed in, he was on a mission training with 7 Tier 1 Special Operations soldiers who were training to very specific tasks. The fact that the definition of active duty is used in this reminds me of low-intensity conflict. It may be low intensity unless you're in it. I think my son was very active on that aircraft. My son was in uniform. My son was serving in the capacity as a crew chief and a door gunner. And in adverse weather conditions, he accepted a mission to train people for combat in the future. And in that, he gave all and lost his life.
And he did, Major. Let's hear what the Army has to say, and I want you to react. Well, eligible for interment, he does not meet the requirements for burial in Arlington National Cemetery. So what Cynthia Smith and the Secretary of the Army is saying to you and your family is, well, if you want to cremate your boy, then we will take him at Arlington. But if you want him to be buried, we won't do that. How do you react to that, and how do you react to the Army telling you how you can dispose of the mortal remains of your boy?
Sir, that is disturbing on a number of levels. First and foremost, I'm responsible for taking care of my son's affairs. His wife, Megan, is 7 months pregnant, and it is her desire, the desire of our extended families, to have our son, who died serving his country, interred at Arlington for the purpose of, in the future, when her daughter's at school and they ask, where is your father, she should be able to say, in Arlington. And the fact that others are interred there makes my son no less a man because he was in the National Guard. And because he was in the National Guard does not mean that my family should have to cremate and put his ashes in an urn to put him in a smaller space. My son died in the service of his nation. He volunteered during a time of war.
He did.
And
Major,
that space should be provided.
Let me read his wife's letter to the Army Secretary and then ask you an important question. She wrote, when I told my husband goodbye before leaving on his last mission, I would have never dreamed that I would wake up a single mother and widow. He was so full of light, love, and happiness, and that shines through in the way that you've spoken about him. The Secretary of Army, Secretary McHugh, seems to have stepped aside from his responsibilities on this issue and hasn't acted. There's an opportunity now. If you had the ability to sit with the President in the Oval Office, what would you say to the Commander-in-Chief, President Obama, with regard to this? And maybe say it today.
I would say that my son was a professional who volunteered in a time of war, that he was known as a consummate professional, a good soldier. He was in superb physical condition. He believed in what he was doing. In a conversation at one time with his stepmother, she asked, why are you going into the service? And my son turned around and said, if not me, then who? I remember that clearly. I talked to my son 2 hours before he went in. He was on a telephone. He was ecstatic. He said, Dad, I've sent you a video. You've got to see it. And it showed the Marines on a spy rig, and it showed them kicking the boat out to go in and follow it. And then he said, Dad, I'm going back out in a couple of hours. The weather's bad, but we're going to do it. At that time, my wife came in from work at Quantico, and I was able to say to my son, take care, I love you. And he said, I love you, Dad.
Wow.
And 2 hours later, he went in at 161 miles an hour with a team, 11 people,
Major
one
Florida,
fight.
Obviously, you loved him and he loved you. And we hope that you have healing and health and that the President acts on your behalf and the family. We wish you well, and we're going to keep an eye on the story. Thank you, Major.
I thank you for doing this.
Good morning.